We live in interesting times for the headlines. China's anti-graft watchdog announced an investigation after the death of a whistleblowing doctor sparked anger over the government's handling of the coronavirus emergency. The world is running out of masks and other protective equipment against the novel coronavirus, the World Health Organization chief warned on Friday. President Trump celebrates his impeachment acquittal in a rambling, emotional speech raging against the investigations that have overshadowed his entire administration. And heavy rain raises hopes for an end to Australia's unprecedented bushfire crisis as downpours douse blazes that have burned out of control for months. I'm Alma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world. Thank you very much for joining us, and now to the news. China's anti-graft watchdog announced Friday an investigation after the death of a whistleblowing doctor sparked anger over the government's handling of the coronavirus emergency. Dr. Li Wenliang died after contracting the virus while treating patients in Wuhan. Last December, he sent a message to fellow medics warning of a virus he thought looked like SARS, another deadly coronavirus. But he was told by police to stop making false comments and was investigated for spreading rumors. Now, news of his death was met with an intense outpouring of grief on Chinese social media site Weibo, but this quickly turned into anger. There had already been accusations against the government of downplaying the severity of the virus and initially trying to keep it a secret. Dr. Li, who was diagnosed with the virus on February 1, said in a Weibo post in late January that local police had forced him to sign a statement agreeing not to commit any more law-breaking actions. He said police had summoned him after he had seen test results from some patients suggesting SARS in December and decided to remind his colleagues in a group chat to take stronger precaution measures. China's anti-graft agency said Friday it was sending investigators to Wuhan to look into issues related to Dr. Li. The Chinese government has previously admitted shortcomings and deficiencies in its response to the virus, which has now killed 636 people and infected 31,161 in mainland China.
今天在这里还要特别说的是，湖北省武汉市中心医院李文亮医生在抗击疫情中感染新型冠状病毒肺炎，经全力救治，不幸逝世。国家卫生健康委表示深切哀悼，向李文亮医生的家属表示诚挚慰问。
Meanwhile, residents in Beijing expressed their sadness and anger over the death of a whistleblowing doctor whose early warnings about China's new coronavirus outbreak were suppressed by police. Take a look.
这个形容是没错了，我完全同意。然后，他是一个，首先他是肯定是在他的业务上的，或者在他的工作上面是非常有能力的，不然他也不会第一时间能够发现这个现象。然后第二个就是他非常勇敢，非常正直，就是能够把事情真实的表达给大家，然后表达给群众。对这个事情本身也是一种内心的一种愤怒吧，因为不光是他，然后可能这也是每一个人可能以后都会遇到的一种局面，可能都会变成。觉得会越来越多吧，会越来越多，因为他可能是目前为数不多的一个代表，但是后来因为现在的意识越来越强，就是这种意识越来越强，所以肯定以后如果有类似的公众事件的话，也会越来越多的这种代表性的人物。
这个医生从1号开始确诊到昨天去世吧，还是挺就是大家我觉得都挺意外的，没有想到就是说有这么快，包括他的家里人状况也不是很好，据说啊，所以就是 对于我们来说，可是还是想知道这个事情到底是因为什么。我觉得其实大家都挺沉重的，就是有一点点，因为就是已经封闭了这么多天了吧，就是大家的心情就是每天在，说实话是挺低沉的。
President Xi Jinping has called the fight against the virus a people's war, while China's ambassador to the United States, Gui Chengkai, on Friday described Dr. Li's work as part of, quote, our joint efforts fighting against the virus. In recent weeks, censors had allowed Weibo users to criticize Hubei officials, a move that placed attention on them instead of the central government. China's anti-graft agency said Friday it was sending investigators to Wuhan to look into issues related to Dr. Li. After Dr. Li's death, criticism went far beyond the anger directed at local officials, with users questioning the nature of the communist state itself. Mr. Xi Feng, the commissioner of the Chinese Foreign Ministry in Hong Kong, said people within China are engaging in lively discussions online over the crisis that has now killed more than 630 people. Let's listen in.
I assume you must have already see the statement made by the Wuhan Municipal Health Commission on Mr. Li's death. It reads, Mr. Li Wenliang, infected with the novel coronavirus in the battle against epidemic, passed away on February the 7th due to the deterioration of his health and unsuccessful rescue attempts. The Health Commission wants to convey deepest condolences and sympathy to Mr. Li's family members over his death. The Chinese enjoy freedom of speech and access to information under the law. If you go to our online platforms, especially during the past few weeks, then you will see how freely the public are engaging and how actively they are engaging in lively discussions of the epidemics.
Meanwhile, Beijing's ambassador to London said Britain's advice to its nationals to leave China because of the novel coronavirus outbreak was an overreaction, and they urged the policy to be reversed. Ambassador Liu Xiaoming said Beijing had told the UK the move was not a good idea and instead called for a more measured approach. Take a look.
It is our hope that the governments of all countries, including the UK, should understand and support China's efforts, respect the professional advice of WHO, avoid overreaction, avoid creating panic, and ensure the normal cooperation and exchanges between countries.
On Tuesday, the British Foreign Office advised UK nationals to leave China if they can to minimize their risk of exposure to the coronavirus, following similar advice by the United States.
We advise them. We don't think it is a good idea. We believe that the epidemic is controllable, preventable, and curable. And so we ask British side to take objective, cool-headed approach, and also to ensure the normal exchanges and cooperation. Worry about that. Of course, there's also some deep-seated racism in not only in this country but anywhere. So I think at a crisis like this, country should stand together, and people should realize that we have a common enemy of mankind. We should, say no to discriminatory words and behavior.
A third person in the United Kingdom who has tested positive for coronavirus is being treated at St. Thomas Hospital in London. Take a look. UK media reported that the two other patients are being treated at a hospital in Newcastle. It has been reported that the third patient is a middle-aged British man who contracted the virus in Singapore, although the Department of Health has not confirmed this. The patient is thought to have been diagnosed in Brighton and was transferred to St. Thomas Hospital in London, where there is an infectious disease unit. Meanwhile, the official Chinese death toll from the coronavirus outbreak rose on Friday to 636, with the government saying total infections had climbed past 30,000. The toll was raised by 73 new deaths from the epidemic, according to the National Health Commission in its daily update. Another 3,143 new cases of infection were confirmed, bringing total infections in the country thus far to 31,161. The central province of Hubei, where the virus originated, continued to be the hardest hit, accounting for 69 of the new deaths reported in the 24 hours to Friday. Of the reported infections, more than 4,800 of those people were in serious condition. Chinese authorities are still struggling to contain the outbreak despite ordering millions of people indoors in a growing number of cities, with overwhelmed hospitals struggling to treat the surging numbers of ill. At least 61 people on board a cruise ship of Japan have tested positive for the new coronavirus, according to the government on Friday, as thousands of passengers and crew face a 2-week quarantine. An additional 41 passengers were found to have contracted the virus, which has killed hundreds of people, most of them in China, and infected more than 30,000 on the mainland. Japanese authorities have so far tested 273 people on board the Diamond Princess, which was quarantined after a former passenger who disembarked in Hong Kong last month was diagnosed with the virus. The newly diagnosed include 21 Japanese as well as Americans, Canadians, Australians, an Argentine, and a Briton. There were more than 3,700 passengers and crew on the ship when it arrived off Japan's coast on Monday evening. It docked in Yokohama on Thursday to resupply for a quarantine that could last until February 19. 20 people who were earlier diagnosed with the virus have already been removed from the vessel, including one in serious condition. Passengers on the ship have been asked to stay inside their cabins to prevent new infections and have expressed confusion and frustration about a quarantine expected to last until the 19th of February. Japan has already reported at least 25 cases of coronavirus aside from the infections on board the ship, and evacuated hundreds of citizens from Wuhan, the Chinese city where the virus emerged, including a fourth flight on Friday. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus believes that the fight against the coronavirus epidemic is still being waged without seeing the enemy, because there are still too many questions that remain unanswered. Let's listen in.
To put it bluntly, we're shadow boxing. We need to bring this virus out into the light so we can attack it properly. But there is still a lot we don't know. We don't know the source of the outbreak. We don't know what its natural reservoir is, and we don't properly understand its transmissibility or severity. To defeat this outbreak, we need answers to all those questions.
The WHO is convening a 2-day global research and innovation forum next week to share research and ideas on how to combat the virus. Mr. Tedros had pleaded for solidarity among member countries, including asking for donations to help with the outbreak response efforts. Philippine Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Brigido Dulay said the first Filipino worker quarantined in Hong Kong had been released after showing no symptoms of the 2019 novel coronavirus acute respiratory disease. Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Dulay in a tweet said the Filipina household worker was released by health authorities in Hong Kong after the 14-day quarantine. They said the worker was one of the 2 Filipinos placed under strict quarantine by Hong Kong over the possible 2019 nCoV. The Filipina reportedly came in contact with the parents of her employer who earlier traveled to Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak. On Wednesday, the DFA confirmed that the second Filipino worker was quarantined following exposure to her employer who tested positive for the virus. The number of people probed for the novel coronavirus has reached over 200, but 57 of them tested negative for the virus, according to the Philippine Department of Health. Take a look.
As of 12 noon, the cumulative total of our persons under investigation from the beginning of our surveillance is 215. Of the 215 PUIs, 184 are currently admitted and isolated. We have 9 who have refused admission, and we are working on this. 17 have been discharged under strict monitoring, while 2 have died of other causes. We would like to urge everyone, especially the PUIs who refused admission, to please cooperate with the DOH, the LGUs, and the Philippine National Police. We're asking the help of the local government units and PNP. We'd like to remind them that it is our duty as citizens of this nation to assist in protecting the health of our fellow men.
As for the country's third confirmed novel coronavirus case, a 60-year-old Chinese woman who arrived in Cebu City from Wuhan via Hong Kong, Mr. Domingo said the DOH has already identified 106 of her close contacts. The woman has since left for China. Of the 106, Domingo said 22 have been interviewed so far. Mr. Domingo also said the DOH also identified the 441 people who came in contact with the Chinese couple who were the country's first and second confirmed novel coronavirus cases.
As of February 6, 2020, the Epidemiology Bureau, together with the PNP, CIDG, has identified all of the 441 contacts on the first and second case of the nCoV ARD. Of this number, of the 441 which have identified, 379 were passengers and crew from flights taken by the confirmed cases, while 62 contacts were from the hotels, resorts, hospitals, public vehicles, and other places visited by the confirmed cases.
In Taiwan, the country has implemented rationing for surgical face masks after the Wuhan coronavirus caused acute shortages. Take a look.
我来这里排1个小时啦，因为我一直都买不到口罩，从过年之后买不到。
保护我们是好的人。
台湾的口罩基本上还是靠进口为主啊，那我们没有那么多，那现在至少能够保障人民1周有2个，也总比没有好，对啊，就是无症状就是带原者的传染，那尤其是我们现在接收对岸回来的同胞或是人，那你现在已经是无形的状况啊，所以只能防范啊。
The world is running out of masks and other protective equipment against the coronavirus. The World Health Organization chief warned today Mr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus told the WHO's executive board in Geneva that he would be speaking to members of the supply chain network for protective gear to try and resolve bottlenecks in the production. WHO earlier this week said it had started sending masks, gloves, respirators, protective isolation gowns, and test kits to countries requiring assistance. Dr. Tedros also said some countries were still failing to share clinical data on confirmed cases of the virus. He said, quote, "We have a common enemy which is dangerous and which can bring serious upheaval, social, political, and economic. This is the time to fight it and in unison." Dr. Tedros pointed out that for the past 2 days, the number of reported cases of the virus had declined. However, he cautioned against reading too much into that because he said the numbers could go up anytime. Charter flights offered to thousands of Chinese tourists stranded in Bali after Indonesia halted flights over coronavirus fears have been delayed because travel permits have yet to be approved, according to Jakarta on Friday. A diplomatic notice said Beijing was arranging flights for Friday back to Wuhan, the epicenter of the deadly outbreak, which has killed over 600 people and spread around the world. Many of the marooned tourists are from the stricken city and surrounding Hubei province, according to the consulate. But Indonesia's Foreign Affairs Ministry said Friday it had not received the necessary paperwork to greenlight charter trips after the Southeast Asian nation shut down all commercial flights to and from mainland China. Chinese diplomats in Indonesia could not be immediately reached for comment. Earlier, Bali airport authorities had said at least one empty commercial plane was set to arrive from Shanghai to pick up tourists who wanted to return. It wasn't clear how many holiday makers would take up the offer or who would pay for their tickets. Indonesia attracts about 2.1 million Chinese visitors annually, but the number has fallen from about 6,000 arrivals per day to just 1,000 since the outbreak began in mid-December. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsable.
Linggo, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi.
Net25 shows live and on demand anytime, anywhere, on any mobile device on OSM Play.
Welcome back. President Trump and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi took jibes at each other a day after his acquittal in the impeachment trial. President Trump celebrated his impeachment acquittal in a rambling, emotional speech raging against the investigations that have overshadowed his entire administration. Take a look.
I don't like people who use their faith as justification for doing what they know is wrong.
I am profoundly religious. My faith is at the heart of who I am. I take an oath before God as enormously consequential.
I thought what he said about Senator Romney was particularly without class. What did he say? There's some people who use faith as an excuse to do the wrong things. You remember what he said about Romney? You got that there? It's so inappropriate at a prayer.
Nor do I like people who say, I pray for you, when they know that that's not so.
I pray hard for him because he's so off the track of our Constitution, our values, our country, the air our children breathe, the water they drink, and the rest. He really needs our prayers. So he can say whatever he wants. He's talking about things that he knows little about, faith and prayer. Yes.
I had Nancy Pelosi sitting 4 seats away, and I'm saying things that a lot of people wouldn't have said, but I meant every word of it.
Well, next year we will have a new president of the United States. That is an absolute imperative for our country, for our Constitution, for the land that we love from sea to shining sea, which he degrades almost every day, but several times a week.
And one of the reasons the stock market's gone up so much in the last few days is people think we're doing so well. They liked the State of the Union speech.
I tore up a manifesto of mistruths. It's very hard for us to get you to talk about the issues that we are working on, HR 3, infrastructure and the rest. He misrepresented all of that, and I don't need any lessons from anybody, especially the President of the United States, about dignity. It's appalling, the things that he says, and then you say to me, tearing up his falsehoods, isn't that the wrong message? No, it isn't. It's just I have tried to be gracious with him. I'm always dignified. I thought that was a very dignified act compared to my exuberance, as I said. But we will not allow any president to use that Capitol, that chamber of the House of Representatives, of the People's House. But that was not a State of the Union. That was his state of mind.
So I've always said they're lousy politicians, but they do two things. They're vicious and mean. Vicious. These people are vicious. Adam Schiff is a vicious, horrible person. Nancy Pelosi is a horrible person. And she wanted to impeach a long time ago when she said, I pray for the president. I pray for the president. She doesn't pray. She may pray, but she prays for the opposite.
The Senate has spoken in terms of any punishment to the president. He's impeached forever, no matter what he says or whatever headlines he wants to carry around. You're impeached forever. You're never getting rid of that scar. History will always record that you were impeached for undermining the security of our country, jeopardizing the integrity of our elections, and violating the Constitution of the United States.
But this is what the end result is.
Staying in the U.S., Democratic presidential candidates Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders were neck and neck in the chaotic Iowa caucuses, with 100% of precincts reporting but no winner declared following technical issues. The tally comes hours after the Democratic Party chairman ordered a review of the results following technology problems that prevented a complete vote count in the U.S. first nominating contest on Monday, and some doubts were raised about the accuracy of the process. Senator Sanders, the leftist senator from Vermont, and Buttigieg, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, are separated by a razor-thin margin in the final results, which come 3 days after the caucuses.
That screw-up has been extremely unfair to the people of Iowa. It has been unfair to the candidates, all of the candidates, and all of their supporters. Now, as everyone knows, the Iowa process is enormously complicated. In my view, it is far too complicated. And I think what has happened with the Iowa Democratic Party is an outrage, that they were that unprepared that they put forth such a complicated process, relied on untested technology. And also
Meanwhile, President Trump confirmed that the U.S. had killed the leader of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula days after the jihadist group claimed responsibility for a mass shooting at a U.S. naval base. The U.S. conducted a counter-terrorist operation in Yemen that successfully eliminated Qasim al-Rimi, a founder and the leader of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, or AQAP, Trump said in a White House statement. AQAP claimed responsibility on Sunday for a December 6 shooting at a U.S. Naval Air Station Pensacola in Florida, in which a Saudi Air Force officer killed 3 American sailors. The announcement came with President Trump touting U.S. resolve following the killings of Islamic State group leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in October last year and top Iranian General Qasem Soleimani 3 months later. Washington considers AQAP to be the worldwide jihadist network's most dangerous branch. A brawl broke out in Ukraine's parliament and hundreds of people protested outside the legislature as passions heated up over a controversial land reform bill. Take a look. Around 15 lawmakers from President Volodymyr Zelensky's party and their opponents from the party of ex-Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko pushed each other near the rostrum as the legislature struggled to conduct a second and final reading of the bill. Selling Ukrainian land is a crime, pro-Russian lawmaker Vadim Rabinovich, who did not take part in the altercation, shouted during the stormy parliament session. Ruslan Stefanchuk, deputy speaker of the chamber, called on the deputies to maintain order after the lawmakers calmed down. The parliament began debating the legislation, but the reading might take several days. Take a look.
Парламент – місце для дискусії. Доводьте свою правоту в дискусії, а не в кулачних мавпячих прыжках тут вот.
Парламенту давно вирішено, що земля буде продаватися в тому числі і будуть володіти її іноземні банки. І тому тільки референдум всенародний може вирішити, що робити з землею. Все інше – це профанація і обман України.
Землю. Вони протягують такі ганебні законопроекти, які поставлять українців в нерівні умови з транснаціональним капіталом. І українці залишаться обезземеленими. Розумієте, без землі, без роботи, без території.
An estimated 130,000 people, according to the CGT Union in France, took to the streets of Paris to protest the government's pension reform on what is the 9th day of mass protests since they began in December of 2019. The turnout is lower compared to the last mass demonstration on January 29, when an estimated 180,000 people turned up. The new round of protests across France has led to the closure of iconic sites like the Eiffel Tower, as French unions keep up the pressure on President Emmanuel Macron and his pension reform plans. Now, Thursday's protests took place in Paris, Nice, Montpellier, Bordeaux, and other major cities, according to French newspaper Le Monde. Unions have challenged President Macron's logic, saying the reform will force most people to work longer and it could weaken the pension rights of those who have suffered periods of poverty or unemployment. In other news, heavy rains was raising hopes Friday for an end to Australia's unprecedented bushfire crisis as downpours douse blazes that have burned out of control for months. The devastating fires, fueled by prolonged drought and record high temperatures, have raged since September, burning more than 10 million hectares and killing 33 people. An estimated billion animals have perished in the fires that destroyed more than 2,500 homes. The rains in New South Wales, which began earlier in the week in some areas and are forecast to extend into next week, are expected to drench a number of the remaining fires and help contain others. As the bushfire crisis abates, authorities are now bracing for possible flooding. The Bureau of Meteorology issued a string of flood warnings and said some parts of New South Wales will see their highest rainfall totals in 4 years. In other news, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres laid out a sobering view of the current state of the world, saying that a wind of madness is sweeping the globe as instability erupts into unpredictable and violent conflicts. Take a look.
I've spoken recently about winds of hope, but today a wind of madness is sweeping the globe. From Libya to Yemen to Syria and beyond, escalation is back. Arms are flowing and offensives are increasing. All situations are different, but there is a feeling of growing instability and hair-trigger tensions, which makes everything far more unpredictable and uncontrollable, with a heightened risk of miscalculation. Meanwhile, Security Council resolutions are being disrespected even before the ink is dry. The disquiet in streets and squares across the world is proof that people want to be heard. They want world leaders to answer their anxieties with effective action. That means addressing cascading challenges and breaking what I call the vicious circles that define our day.
Mr. Guterres made the remarks on Tuesday morning in a speech laying out his priorities for the new year. His chief goal, he said, will be to break the vicious circles of suffering and conflict and to push for a strong surge of diplomacy for peace. Mr. Guterres also said the UN will redouble its efforts to minimize conflict going forward. There are dozens of conflicts around the world, according to the Council on Foreign Relations, and many of them have been in gridlock for years. The civil war in Syria, for example, has left more than 500,000 people dead since 2011. The civil war in Yemen has resulted in the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. Slave markets have flourished in the chaos created by Libya's conflicts. The genocidal actions against Rohingya communities in Myanmar have created nearly 1 million refugees, and ongoing conflicts in the Democratic Republic of the Congo are enabling an Ebola outbreak. Mr. Guterres also continued his push for climate action as rising ocean temperatures and subsequent ice melt are worsening the crisis. Let's listen in.
The challenge for this year's climate conference in Glasgow, COP26, is clear. All countries must show more ambition on adaptation, mitigation and finance. And the big emitters must lead the way. We need a price on carbon and an end to subsidies to fossil fuels. And we are still seeing too many plans for coal plants. The addiction to coal remains dangerously strong. The big emitters are well known. The European Union, that has affirmed its commitment to it, the United States, China, India, Japan, probably Russia, these are the most important ones. It's absolutely vital that these countries, the countries I mentioned, respect also and assume until we get to Glasgow the commitment to be carbon neutral in 2050.
Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
Tamang impormasyon, napapanahon, Ula Batanes hanggang taon-taon. Di lamang sa bansa, kundi maging sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. Mga balitang makabuluhan, mga panayam sa kinauukulan, subaybayan. Dito lamang sa Net 25. News, entertainment, technology.
Hong Kong Airlines said it has been forced to slash hundreds of jobs and ask remaining staff to take unpaid leave as the coronavirus outbreak compounds problems at the already struggling firm. The announcement by the city's #2 carrier comes days after Cathay Pacific said it had asked all its 27,000 workforce to take 3 weeks leave without salary between March and June because of collapsing demand caused by the health crisis. The virus, which has infected 24 people, one of whom died, comes just as the city was struggling to recover from months of sometimes violent protests that battered the economy and gutted the key tourism sector. Hong Kong Airlines also said in a statement that strict entry and quarantine measures imposed by countries around the world have further impacted travel demand in the city, and the firm had to take vigorous measures to mitigate the challenges. The company said it will lay off 400 employees, with the remainder asked to take a minimum of 2 weeks no pay leave per month or work 3 days a week from February 17 until the end of June. The most productive car factory in the world fell quiet on Friday as South Korea's Hyundai suspended operations at its giant Ulsan complex, hamstrung by a lack of parts, with the coronavirus outbreak crippling China's industrial output. Take a look. The 5-plant network can make 1.4 million vehicles annually in a coastal location, facilitating importing components and exporting cars globally. But supply lines are crucial in an ever more interconnected worldwide economy, and the coronavirus outbreak in China has seen Beijing order factories closed in several areas as it seeks to contain the epidemic. Now, as a result, Hyundai, which with its affiliate Kia ranks as the world's 5th largest auto manufacturer, has run out of the wiring harnesses that connect vehicles' complex electronics. It is having to suspend production at its factories across South Korea, putting 25,000 workers on forced leave and partial wages, healthy victims of the disease outbreak across the Yellow Sea. The impact on Hyundai will be eye-watering, with analysts estimating a 5-day South Korean shutdown to cost the firm at least 600 billion won or $500 million. Hyundai is not the only corporate casualty. Kia will suspend 3 plants for a day on Monday. The South Korean unit of French automaker Renault is considering stopping its factory in Busan next week. And Fiat Chrysler CEO Mike Manley told the FT his firm could be forced to halt one of its European factories. In other news, India is targeting defense exports worth $5 billion in the next 5 years in a bid to boost local manufacturing, according to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The country is the world's 2nd largest arms importer after Saudi Arabia, according to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. But Prime Minister Modi wants to turn that around under an ambitious Made in India initiative. Take a look. In other business news, France's consumer watchdog said that Apple had agreed to pay 25 million euros for failing to tell iPhone users that software updates could slow down older devices. The scandal erupted in 2017 of December when the U.S. tech giant admitted that its most recent iOS software was slowing the performance of older telephones whose battery life was deteriorating. Critics accused the firm of forcing users to buy phones sooner than necessary, and the outcry forced Apple to upgrade its software and offer steep discounts on battery replacements. French prosecutors opened an inquiry in January 2018 at the request of the Halt Planned Obsolescence or HOP Association. iPhone owners were not informed that installing iOS updates 10.2.1 and 11.2 could slow down their devices, the DGCCRF anti-fraud agency said in a statement. Apple said it welcomed the accord with the DGCCRF, which will allow it to avoid a potentially embarrassing public trial. It said, quote, "Our goal has always been to create secure products appreciated by our clients, and making iPhones that last as long as possible is an important part of that," unquote. All right, here's Ben Bernaldez for Sports News.
The Mighty Sports Philippines brought home Filipino pride after winning the Dubai International Basketball Championship. This is the first time that a non-Middle Eastern team clinched the prestigious title in 3 decades. The team celebrated their victory together with the media and the almighty sports family. This 2020, the team returned to Dubai seeking revenge after losing to its final foe, Al-Riyadi Lebanon, last year, forcing Mighty Sports to bow out from the semis and return home in 3rd place. Destiny brought them back against each other in the winner-take-all finals match last Sunday, February 2, at the Shabab Al-Ahili Club, where Mighty Sports Philippines dethroned Al-Riyadi Lebanon with the final score 92-81. The team's do-it-all captain Ronaldo Bachmann was named the MVP of the 2020 Dubai International Basketball Tournament. He was the rock for the Philippines club, averaging 19.3 points and 7 rebounds through the whole of the Invitational Tournament. Imports Mackenzie Moore and Jelani Kendrick, together with the future of Philippine basketball, Terry Ravena, Gab Banal, Dave Eldefonso, Juan and Javi Gomez Deliano, Jaime Malonzo, Jarrell Lim, Isaac Go, Joaquin Manuel, Mikey Williams, and PBA stars Joseph Yeo and Bo Baga made up the championship Philippine squad.
Seeing my brother play for Mighty Sports in the past few years, I've always wanted to know and represent Mighty Sports, and now that I had the chance, I made sure na nakapasok ako sa experience, because in a span of 2 weeks, I kind of felt how it is to be like a pro basketball player, training with great players and representing the Philippines.
The whole experience and all was just a great experience to play in. The Filipino crowd was amazing out there.
I wanted to represent the brand, to represent these great people that we try to admire, and the way we act in life to copy you guys. So it's an honor that we get to do it for you guys.
Kahit saan kami sinasama ni Boss. And Boss, thank you sa tiwala mo sa amin.
But the biggest addition to the squad, however, was none other than Gilas veteran and naturalized player Andre Blanche, who ended the tournament with another brilliant performance, putting in a 21-point, 10-rebound, double-double performance. Head coach Charles Tew believed in the deep talent of this year's roster, and they proved themselves mighty as the team dominated and swept the tournament. The title sweep was Mighty Sports' 3rd since winning the Jones Cup in Taiwan in 2016 and 2019.
We just want to thank the Lord for everything. I think with this team, actually, God was very part of our journey. Everything eventually fell into place. The players just started playing better and better and gelling as a team. So we were able to accomplish our goal. So I didn't think we'd sweep it, but we're very happy that we were able to sweep and get the championship.
SVP Special Assistant to the President, Coach Ryan Gregorio, expressed their gratitude for the hard work and honor that the team brought for the country.
It's always a source of pride to be partnered with a winning group. And we've come a long way. Mighty Sports, of course, represented by Cesar Wong Chu King and Sir Alex, have been very supportive, especially in the programs of the Federation. And it's just so overwhelming that they were able to bring pride to the country by winning the Dubai Cup, the first ever by a non-Middle Eastern country. And in the future tournaments, we're again going to align with them, partner with them to bring more trophies for the country.
Given Mighty's recent streak of international success, the team management is already raring to join more tournaments to further strengthen the program and give Filipinos abroad a piece of home wherever they play. And that's our story for EN Sports. I'm Ben Bernaldez, and I'm 1 with 25.
And finally in our news, Los Angeles will host a public memorial on February 24 at the Staples Center for NBA icon Kobe Bryant and 8 others killed last month in a helicopter crash, according to U.S. media. Now, the Los Angeles Times, citing 2 unnamed sources, and CNN, citing a source close to the Bryant family, were among the outlets reporting the event, which had not been officially announced. The Los Angeles Lakers, the club where Bryant starred for 20 seasons, Staples Center, and Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti's office did not immediately confirm the event was planned. The 2/24 date would carry some symbolism. Bryant wore the number 24 jersey in the later stages of his career, and his 13-year-old daughter Gianna, who also died in the crash, wore number 2 for her school basketball team. And that's the news for tonight. Join us online and here again tomorrow evening. From all of us here at Eagle News, thank you, and we'll see you soon. I'm Alma Angeles, always 1 with 25. Good night.